I could tell by the energy in the room that it was fun. So who wants to share, which agent person in the role play wants to share some thoughts on their role play and what their notes were? If somebody doesn't raise a hand, I'm just going to pick. So, Elizabeth.
I'm always volunteering. It's a disease.
I love it. No, it's awesome.
So, hi, I'm Elizabeth.
Stand up, please.
So Liz and I were partners. I was the agent. And I just did this yesterday, so and for real, so it's kind of like hot, on the case. I think what's so great about it is that when you have the questions here, it's the basic, you're telling a story, who, what, why, where, when, how. You're just asking those questions of the person, not thinking so much about about the paperwork you have to do next or trying to get them to sign it, but just getting to know that person. This is a really easy guide. It's not complicated. It's very easy just to, and they lead to each other. I noticed how gracefully they led from one to the other. So if I started with the why, then I went to the when, then I went to the where, then I went to concerns, there was no reason to second guess myself. It just went in that order.
Right.
And she had great things to say. As a response, so it was good to work with her.
Can you talk to us a little bit about some of the notes that you took? What did you learn about her?
I learned that she has been living in a home in Santa Rosa for 25 years, raised her family there. They're now out of the house. She wants to move back home to her home in Monterey, where one of her children is living, who's 25 years old. They have no children yet. She doesn't have a really pressing timeline. But what was most important to her was a smooth transaction, which I kind of dealt with later. I circled back to, when she imagines moving to Monterey, what would that be like? And she said, well, I can imagine really well because I used to live there, so there's not much to imagine, as she put it. So she already had that kind of in her mind. Scares her or concerns because she disclosed that she knew a lot about real estate. She said that she wants a smooth transition. She wants to see a variety of offers. She wants a good agent who listens to her opinion. She wants her to be good communication. She wants to trust that the buyer's agent knows what they're doing. And then I think she mentioned that she wanted a good file, which I thought was great. Considering
When's the last time a seller said
I love that.
Dot your T's or dot your I's and cross your T's?
So then I concluded by saying and complimenting her on her knowledge about real estate and how great that was.
Awesome.
That was really fun.
Thank you very much for sharing. I appreciate that. So who else in here took some notes? Who took notes in here? I know you guys took notes. Alice, talk to us about.
But I observed that it's very easy to forget to ask more questions from one answer. That we're on to another question, different, not related, but not sticking with more questions about that one question.
That was hard to stay on that track.
To remember to do that, because we're doing what we do is we think about what our next question is instead of,
Right.
yeah.
And what does it tell them? So if you just said it's hard to do that because you're thinking about what your next question is instead of listening to the answer, right? That's what's so great. Isn't that what's so great about the 3 deep needs analysis? Because remember we talked about staying in
In the present.
curiosity, staying in curiosity about the person who's in front of you. And genuine curiosity means that when somebody answers a question, that answer should prompt more questions about that answer. Yes, Joanne?
I sometimes wonder if my questions are confrontational.
Really?
I can tell you, yes, they are.
Well, let me rephrase that. I know that my questions are often confrontational. One of the, Alice came up with the classics we all get. When do you want to sell your house? I'm in no hurry. The other one is, I'm not going to give it away. And I'm wondering if the direct question, at what price do you think you would be giving your house away?
Of course.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you ask that question? I mean, that's like what I would be curious about.
That's not
I would just say, what does giving it away look like to you?
Yeah.
What is giving it away?
What do you mean giving it away?
And then the answer is, well, I don't know. That's what I'm looking at you to show me what the comps are.
What's important to you about the comps?
Yeah, what's important to you about the comp? Okay, what's
Right?
important to you?
How did you determine, how would you determine the value of the property? That kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
An example of a confrontational question would be what? What do you mean by confrontational? Because you just heard Jimmy talk about the fact that he was a coach and a speaker for Tom Ferry. And Tom Ferry's method is direct.
Right.
However, I don't think it's confrontational, and I think sometimes people get confused between direct questions and confrontational questions. You guys know what I mean by that?
Oh, yeah.
Like a
Give a
good,
demo.
a good direct question is, well, what are you gonna do if your house doesn't sell? Especially when you have that seller that's kind of like, well, I want to try it out on the market, you know, that kind of
Yeah,
seller.
if they ask you something like that, you know, so when you do sell your house, where are you gonna go? Well, it depends if I sell, you know, they don't seem motivated, you're trying to gauge motivation.
Right, and you're not. and
Give me
you
an
speak
example though,
direct.
you said, Joanne, I feel like my questions are confrontational. Give me an example of a confrontational question.
We sit down, we do a CMA, we go over the comps, we agree to a list price of, say, $350. Come back the second time to actually do the listing when it's time to put it on the market, and now they want $375.
Mhm.
To me, what's confrontational is, and how did you get to $375?
That's not confrontational.
I don't think it's confrontational depending on your demeanor when you ask that question.
Yeah.
I mean, confrontational would be like, you out of your mind? Right? That's a question. Are you out of your mind? It's confrontational, but but the question you asked, I think it's a good question.
It's hard for
How'd
me
you
to say to
determine-
people,
Yeah.
your house is not the same caliber as that house.
Okay, so if you say that, who owns that answer?
You do.
What do you
What'd
mean?
you say?
I was gonna say, she does, if she says that.
When you say to somebody-
I mean, just.
Something like, I know you wouldn't actually say that, but you're right. When you say something like that to somebody, like, well, here's why this property is, even though it's a relevant property, is probably likely to sell for more than yours is gonna sell for. Is that a question or a statement? So when you say that, what do? In their mind, they go, no.
No.
Right? But could you ask the right questions to lead them to that conclusion? And if you could, who owns that conclusion?
They do.
They do. So what kind of questions would you ask if you were in a situation where you had determined a price at $350, you go back to put the price on the listing with a modification or whatever later on, and they're like, well, listen, before we put it on the market, we're not comfortable with $350. We're looking at more like $375, maybe $400. I think we should be on at $400, maybe $399, and you know, if we have to come down, we'll come down. And what's your first question? Are you out of your mind?
How did you arrive there? How did you arrive?
Great question. Great question. What's wrong with that question? So, excellent. So here's one thing you can do, and you'll see Jimmy do this when we role play. He a lot of times, when somebody gives him an answer that's not necessarily on the path that he's on, he doesn't disagree, he doesn't argue with them, even if the person is out of their mind, he'll say something like, oh, great, excellent, so how'd you come up with that price? Right? Fantastic. Outstanding. How'd you come up with that price?
Amazing.
Right? Amazing. Whatever. Some kind of superlative.
Glorious!
You do that or not?
Well, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's not a real concern at that point. You gotta remember why you're having the conversation, right? I mean, if you start falling for all their smoke screens that they're putting up.
Stand
and
up.
you're-
Sorry.
If you start falling for all the smoke screens they put in front of you, you're gonna get sidetracked from what your ultimate goal is. Which if you're on the phones or you're at whatever you're at, whatever point you're trying to get to the next step of the appointment, right? Whether that's get an appointment or get a listing sign or get a buyer broker sign or get a contract signed. And so when you start falling for, like, when they start saying the stuff, so usually when I say it, I'll acknowledge it, and then I just kind of forget about it, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. It doesn't affect them going to work with me or not, or them going to list their home or not. If it is, then you'll know, because they'll keep bringing it back up, so.
Right,
But if you
right.
give me direction, just gonna say, I hear you.
I hear you. So they need to feel heard. But I guess what I hear you saying is, look, they need to feel heard when they say something like that, but it doesn't really matter in the scheme of things. It's really kind of just a smokescreen. Because what's their real goal? What's that person's goal? Why are you sitting there?
Sell
They want to sell their house.
The most they can.
And who determines that what that house sells for? You?
The market.
Them?
Market.
No. Who determines what the house sells for? The buyers, the market. The market's way smarter than you. The market's way smarter than the seller. Yeah.
Wouldn't you bring them back to their why in a roundabout questioning?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And then when you do that, they own it. Liz?
I think another issue that comes up with a lot of us is the comfort level of asking the questions. If you have a difficult time asking questions and feeling that you are prying, that you're getting a little bit too personal, then I think what can happen is you will label your questions so that they will seem negative,
Yeah.
and therefore you won't ask them.
Yeah.
So I think the
For what
personal
Joanne's saying about
labeling.
feeling like they're confrontational.
Right, so I think, yes, so I think the personal labeling that can go on inside of us unconsciously, I think it's important that we work on bringing that conscious so that we are not creating our own barriers to the questions that need to be asked.
I totally agree with that. And Jimmy, you said something when you were doing expired calling the other day. You said something when you were doing expired calling the other day that really triggered something for everybody in the room. You mentioned your relationship to the outcome and when you're asking questions and smoke screens and stuff like that. She was just saying, you know, it's hard to get past sometimes when you're in this interrogatory dialogue and you're asking questions. She was saying, and I'm paraphrasing, right? But she was saying, well, sometimes it's hard to get around the fact that you feel like the questions are negative or too prying or too personal. What about the outcome changes that for you?
I'm not attached to it. The second the person.
Say that again, sorry.
I'm
Say
just
that
not
again.
attached in any way to the outcome. If at any point I lose that customer, okay, I go to the next one. You know, I mean, that's
Right.
your. And you can't. It's not that I don't care about that person. It's that I'm not going to let that affect how I try to sell that person and my ability to go after the sell. In a lot of agents, and that's one of the reasons why so many of the top real estate coaches press prospecting so hard, because when you do that, you have enough clients that you never are attached to the outcome.
Right.
When you only have a couple clients, you get attached to the outcome, because if you lose your client, you know, you don't have anything else to do, right?
Right.
And so you start teaching it, you know, you start teaching them differently how to work with you, and you start treating them differently than you should, and because of that, they actually see you as less of a professional. It's like when you walk in, if you walk into a doctor and, you know, if he just immediately started subscribing stuff for you or like didn't ask you any questions, you'd be like, what's this guy's deal?
Yeah.
I mean, you want your doctor to figure out where the pain is. It's the same thing with these people. It's a more of a financial pain or a house pain, whatever that is. But you got to dig in there and figure it out what their need is. And you know, if anybody's ever asking, like, you sure ask a lot of questions. You know, it's pretty simple. Just be like, I need to know exactly what you need, so I know how to help you. I can't help you if I don't. And I even use the doctor example on my clients all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And so did you get, like, he said don't be attached, he's not attached to the outcome. Right? Yes, Kathy.
Well, we got off on kind of a little rocky start because I asked him why he's moving, and he says he's getting divorced.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you go from there?
Oh man, what happened? No, I'm just kidding.
So that I feel like he's going to there. What do you want? Then he says a condo.
So then we started over.
So well, you know, that's really great. Actually. So what would be a good question about that answer?
I don't know. That's what I'm asking.
Jimmy.
Well, again, you have to take emotion.
Stand up, sorry.
As you take emotion out of it, they will appreciate that, okay? So I would say something like, okay, great. The good news is I work with people in your situation all the time. Tell me, I need to know a little bit about the situation. Are you for sure planning on selling the home? Have you guys discussed it together? Is he on board with you selling the home? Is he going to sign if we get an offer? You start asking these questions, but ask it from a professional standpoint, and they'll actually appreciate the fact that you're able to really know what's going on without caring about their situation. Because I always say to them, great, I deal with people in your situation all the time. I need to ask you a couple questions so I understand how we need to get this solved. So.
You're getting divorced. Outstanding. Outstanding.
I wouldn't say great.
I think that's awesome. That's awesome. We're gonna have Jimmy up here in just 1 second too, so get ready. Okay. Yes, Jazzy, and then you.
You know, one time I had said, oh, well, I'm starting here, and I was.
Sorry, Jazzy. Can you
quiet.
stand up real quick? Stand up, please.
Really? Can I just?
Yes. No. Stand up.
I had talked to some people that were getting a divorce, and I said, well, I'm sorry, and they're like, please don't be, I'm happy. Because you do feel, I mean, for me, it's uncomfortable to say great, because I'm.
Yeah.
Don't say, oh, sorry, because that's what they'll say most of the
Yeah.
time. I honestly go, okay, great. The good news is, I deal with people like you all the time, or in your situation all the time.
Or just okay.
Because it gives them nothing to like get upset or bothered about in any
Yeah.
way.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you on that, and saying that you're sorry like totally changes the whole tone, doesn't it? The conversation is going to take a funky turn, right?
If you don't want to say, okay, great, say, oh, wow, so it sounds like you definitely need to sell. You know, like that's what I said, or something along those lines, just so that they were like, okay, yep. And you just want to put them at ease, though, you know, and
Yeah,
let
you
them
could
know.
even say, oh, wow, well, listen, you know, I deal with people in this situation all the time. Let me ask you a couple questions. Are you two on the same page about selling the property? Right?
Just move on.
Blah, blah, blah.
I would say something like, in this situation, I'm glad you called me because I've dealt with these kind of things.
Love it. Awesome.
Empathize, don't sympathize.
In other words, right, be yourself.
Right.
Be yourself. It comes off like unless you're a really good actor, it comes off like an act if you try to read someone else's lines.
Right.
Which is why you need lines, you need a script, but then you internalize that script and it becomes your language. Right? That's what, you know, I mean, Jimmy you probably have scripts.
I do.
Yeah. And do you read them word for word? Do you know them? You probably know them word for word, but do you always recite them word for word in a situation?
I memorized them word for word so that I can internalize it in my own words and make it sound good. I was telling, I was actually on Monday, one of my agents has been struggling with this for seller calls, so I did them with him for about an hour. And at the end of it, he goes, you literally stutter at the same place every time in the script. I said, yeah, that's part of my script, but it's by the time I've got it down that well, it sounds like I literally, it's same thing like when I meet someone on the door, I purposely stumble for a second. It puts them okay, this guy's not selling me. Like when I'm doing the solar, I have everybody's information right in front of me, right?
Right.
And I say to them, I was like, the second they answer the door, I just go, are you Mr. Roy? Are you Roy? And if their last name's weird, I'll purposely screw it up, and I'm just like, oh yeah. As soon as I saw that name, I knew I was gonna screw this up. Anyway, I'm Jim. But that's a script, but it's all coming off so natural. Like and I use this as an example because I met David Spade one time and Chris Rock at an event. You guys know who they are, right? The actor comedians. And they were so shy and normal in person when I saw them at this. It was at a bowling alley, and then they get on the stage. And they're a whole different person. And you think a stand-up comedian is being spontaneous when he's like spitting out these funny lines in the crowd. But if you watch them and follow them, it's the same lines every single time. It's all scripted, but the genius is that it comes off non-scripted. You have to memorize your scripts first to deliver them powerfully where people don't feel like it's a script.
Absolutely. Can you come up here real quick?
Right now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're gonna. I want to role play. You're into the agent. I want to role play a needs analysis with you. Okay. Kind of dig a little bit, and you don't need to worry about these. You know, do what you always do, right? I'm expecting some fairy stuff, right?
Okay. Are you
So-
selling or buying or where are we
I'm
at?
selling, right?
And how does
We
it-
just got done looking at the house, and you don't know anything other than, I know that you typically would have, you know, pretty good qualifying questions before you go out to the appointment. What you know about me is this. I'm the only one on title. I'm the only decision maker, so you meet with all the decision makers. I've lived in the house for 10 years. We haven't done anything to it. It's exactly what it is on the title. And it's, I don't know, you're gonna tell me how much it's worth and stuff like that, but I'm ready to sell. And the reason I'm selling is because I'm gonna move to, I'm job transferring out of the area.